Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, consider subscribing. It really helps keep these stories coming. And while you're here, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Now, sit back, relax, and let's get into the story. The world didn't end with a bang. There was no mushroom cloud, no sirens blaring in every city, no voice from above warning us that everything was about to change. No, the end began with silence, a kind of silence that crept under your skin and made the hairs on your arms stand up. It started with the transmission that came through our encrypted NATO channel. Garbled, broken, then static, then nothing. My name's Staff Sergeant James Adler. I've served with the NATO Rapid Reaction Force for over a decade. I've been deployed in every kind of disaster, earthquakes, uprisings, even biohazard incidents. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for what happened that day. It started at 4:32 hours, local time, while we were stationed at a remote operations base in Eastern Europe. The area was quiet. Too quiet. We'd picked up an automated distress signal from a civilian medical lab in Sector 7G, deep in the forest, off any official maps. That alone was enough to raise red flags. Command told us it was a false alarm. Power fluctuation, they said. Nothing to worry about. But the technician's voice on the radio said something else entirely before it cut out. They got out. They're everywhere. Do not, I repeat, do not come here. Then static. We were sent in anyway. There were 5 of us. Myself, Corporal Ramos, Sergeant Mickelson, Private Doyle, and our medic, Kazia. We loaded into a UH-60 helicopter, geared up with full containment suits and weapons live. I remember the look in Kazia's eyes. She'd been reading something on her tablet, classified reports coming in from other regions. She looked up at me and whispered, "This isn't a test." The facility looked like something out of a science fiction movie. Tall, concrete walls surrounded by a rusted metal fence. The guard post at the front gate was empty. No sign of struggle, no blood. Just the kind of emptiness that feels unnatural, like everyone had just vanished. We moved in tight formation through the gate. Mickelson did a sweep with the motion scanner. Nothing. But as soon as we stepped into the main compound, that silence was shattered. A soft sound echoed through the hallway. Not a scream. Not a voice. Just a wet, dragging noise, like bare feet on tile and something heavy being pulled. We advanced slowly, flashlights cutting through the gloom. The emergency lights were flickering red. Every few seconds, the whole building seemed to throb with electricity, like it was breathing. We passed a lab with shattered glass and overturned furniture. Blood smeared across the walls. Still no bodies. That was when we saw the first one. At the end of the hallway stood a man in a torn lab coat. His head twitched in unnatural jerks. His eyes, completely white, no iris, no recognition. Just empty sockets of rage, and when he moved, it wasn't a run. It was more like he lunged every muscle in his body, straining to move faster than possible. Ramos raised his weapon and shouted, "Down on the ground!" But the thing didn't stop. He opened fire. The shots echoed one after another, center mass. But the man kept coming. It wasn't until Mickelson fired a round straight into its head that it collapsed, twitching once before going still. We stood there, weapons raised, breathing heavy through our masks. "What in the world was that?" Doyle muttered. Then we heard it. Dozens of dragging footsteps, moaning, scraping nails, echoing from all directions. We didn't wait. I ordered a full retreat to the extraction point. We ran. The halls twisted like a maze. Doors slammed shut. Lights flickered and died. Alarms began to wail. Too late. We made it to the main stairwell when the wave hit us. Dozens of them poured from the corridors. Men, women, even what looked like security personnel. All of them with pale skin, blood-streaked faces, and empty eyes. They moved with a hunger I've never seen before. Mickelson stayed behind to cover us. "Go!" he yelled as he threw a frag down the hallway. The blast was deafening. When the smoke cleared, we were already 3 floors down. But we'd lost Doyle. His scream still echoes in my head. One moment he was there, the next he was being pulled down by 3 of them. We couldn't go back. By the time we reached the sublevel, Cassia was already on the comms trying to get evac. But no one was answering, not HQ, not the chopper, just static. We barricaded ourselves in what looked like a storage room. I was trying to catch my breath, my ears ringing, when I noticed the smell. Not just blood, not rot, something else. A chemical smell, sharp, metallic, mixed with antiseptic. It was coming from a broken pipe overhead. Cassia checked the air monitor on her suit. Her face went pale. "It's airborne." I didn't want to believe it. We weren't just dealing with infected personnel. This wasn't some random outbreak. This was something that had been released, something made in a lab, and it was spreading. We needed answers. So we searched the room for anything. Documents, tablets, logs. That's when we found the terminal. It was still operational, connected to the facility's internal logs. Cassia began digging, eyes darting back and forth across the screen. I stood guard at the door, every sound making me flinch. She finally whispered, "They called it Project Raise." The logs were coded, but what we understood chilled us to the bone. The lab had been developing a neural suppressant compound, something meant to reboot damaged cells in comatose patients. But it mutated. Once introduced into the bloodstream, it overrode the brain's higher functions, leaving only the most primal instincts behind. Hunger, aggression, pack behavior. But worst of all, the infected could pass it on through direct contact, a bite, a scratch, even blood exposure. It wasn't a disease. It was a weapon. We couldn't stay in that room. The noise outside was getting louder. They were gathering, clawing at the walls, scratching, snarling. We needed to move. We found a secondary access tunnel beneath the facility, a narrow maintenance shaft that led to a drainage culvert outside the perimeter fence. Cassia said it was our best shot. We climbed down the rusted ladder into the darkness. Our flashlights barely lit more than a few feet ahead. The walls were tight. Every sound echoed. Dripping water, breathing, scrapes. Then we heard something behind us. Not footsteps, crawling. Ramos turned just in time to see a figure drop into the shaft behind us. Its bones cracked as it bent unnaturally, crawling like a spider, hissing through broken teeth. We opened fire, but in the tunnel everything was chaos. The shots deafened us, ricochets sparked. Ramos screamed. He was bitten. It wasn't deep, just a gash on his forearm. But Cassia looked at me and shook her head. "There's no time," she said. "We get out, then decide." We reached the culvert exit just before dawn. The forest beyond was silent. The sky bled red with the rising sun. Birds weren't singing. No wind. Just a stillness that told me something had changed, something massive. We were alive, but for how long? We moved fast through the trees, sticking low, careful not to break branches or crunch dead leaves. Ramos was sweating through his gear. He kept mumbling to himself, clutching his arm where the wound throbbed beneath the bandages. We knew. We all knew. But no one said it out loud. Cassia stayed close to him, watching. Not in a comforting way, but in that quiet, clinical way medics get when they know what's coming, and have to make a decision no one wants to make. By 6:20 hours, we reached a dirt road, half overgrown with weeds and debris. The GPS on my wrist finally picked up a satellite. We were 12 kilometers from the nearest outpost, an old, decommissioned NATO bunker. We used it as a fallback site during training exercises. It had working comms. If we could get there, we could reach command. We started walking, and that's when we noticed the smoke. Thick, black, rising just above the tree line. Not from the facility. This was coming from somewhere closer. Maybe a farmhouse or a small village. I hesitated, debating whether to investigate or bypass it entirely. We chose to take a look, partly out of duty, mostly out of hope maybe someone had survived. Maybe they had answers. The village had no name on the map, just a cluster of houses, a church steeple, and a single gas station. It looked abandoned. We moved in with weapons drawn, keeping to the shadows. The place smelled like burned wood and wet ash. One of the houses had been set on fire recently, still smoldering. The door had been barricaded from the inside. The windows were shattered out. We checked the gas station. The lights flickered dimly. The radio behind the counter was still playing some distant station. Old rock music warbling through the static. A single backpack lay on the floor, open, with blood smears leading to the bathroom. Inside was a person, or what used to be one. Slumped over the sink, jaw unhinged, eyes glazed. Whatever had happened here, it had ended fast, or slow. Hard to tell with these things. Cassia checked the fuel tanks. Still active, she said. We can siphon. We took what we could carry, water, rations, batteries. I found a shortwave radio in the manager's office, turned the dial, hoping for anything. Nothing. Then a faint voice cut through. All units in range, retreat to Zone Echo. Repeat, this is not a drill. Zone Echo, I knew it, a NATO safe zone, set up months ago for chemical threat response teams, heavily fortified. If it still stood, it could be our best shot. We left the village just as the wind shifted. That's when Ramos collapsed. His skin had gone pale. Veins darkened beneath the surface. He looked up at me, eyes filled with something between fear and apology. I can feel it, Sarge, he whispered. It's inside me. We had a decision to make. I looked at Cassia. She wouldn't say it. She didn't have to. There's no cure, no antidote, no miracle. Ramos looked at me. You know what has to happen. But I couldn't. I handed him my sidearm. He took it with shaky fingers. Keep going. Don't stop. Don't let this thing win. He walked into the trees alone. We didn't follow. We didn't look back. We just kept walking. By 8 o'clock hours, we reached the bunker perimeter. From the outside, it looked untouched. Reinforced steel doors, motion sensors still blinking red. A good sign. Cassia activated the access panel. It buzzed once. Denied. Again, denied. Someone had changed the codes. Then a voice came from the intercom. Identify. This is Staff Sergeant James Adler. NATO Rapid Response. Code Black Clearance. We need shelter. Pause. Then a mechanical hiss. The doors opened. Inside were 2 soldiers. Not ours, French Special Forces. They looked tired, dirty, worn down. They didn't ask questions, just waved us in. The inside of the bunker was dimly lit, filled with radio chatter and scattered gear. A map was spread across the main table, with red markers placed on several cities, each marked with the same note. Lost. I met the commanding officer, Captain Luc Delacroix. He didn't smile. You came from Facility 7G? I nodded. He let out a long breath. Then it's already too late. They'd been receiving fragmented transmissions all night. Reports from other NATO units, brief, chaotic, filled with panic. Whole towns going dark. Medical centers being overrun. Even a naval base going silent after a breach on board. The outbreak wasn't isolated. It was everywhere. And it was spreading faster than anyone predicted. Worse, command was going quiet. Their last orders were to establish holding zones and prepare for mass quarantine. But the infection wasn't slowing. If anything, it was accelerating. Delacroix looked at me. "You said 5 of you entered. Where's the rest?" I hesitated. "Gone," I said. "1 lost in the facility. 1 chose not to continue." He nodded like he'd heard the same story before. We were given clean gear, food, and a few hours to rest, but I couldn't sleep. None of us could. Around noon, something strange happened. The alarms went off. Movement detected on the outer perimeter. Dozens of blips on the radar, not a horde, something else moving fast, tactical. We scrambled to the viewing cameras. They were soldiers, or at least they used to be. Armored, masked, carrying weapons, staggering forward in formation, but their eyes were empty. Whatever was in that compound, whatever Project Rays had become, it was intelligent. It was learning. It was organizing. Delacroix ordered a full lockdown. Turrets activated, claymores set. But I knew deep down, it wouldn't be enough. They weren't just mindless anymore. Something had shifted. That's when the power flickered. The lights dimmed, the hum of the generators slowed, and the screaming started. From below, from inside the bunker. It didn't make sense. The bunker was sealed, every level reinforced. No signs of breach from the outside. But something was in the lower levels, and it was tearing through steel like it was paper. Captain Delacroix shouted orders. Half the team moved to secure the upper hatch. The rest of us descended into the corridor, weapons ready, every step echoing off the concrete walls. The flickering lights cast long, jerking shadows on the floor. We passed the mess hall, chairs overturned, trays scattered, a half-eaten meal still steaming. Someone had been here just minutes ago. Then we found the first body, Private Lemoyne. Eyes wide open, face frozen in confusion, no visible wounds. Cassia bent down and checked him. Her voice was dry, no sign of struggle, no bites, no blood. He looked peaceful. That terrified me more than anything else. Further in, we heard a soft scraping sound, like metal dragging across the wall. We turned the corner and froze. A soldier stood alone in the hallway back to us, twitching slightly. He wore a NATO uniform, but his body was off, too rigid, like something was wearing him instead of being him. I raised my weapon. He turned around. His eyes were milky white. A black line split the side of his neck, pulsing with a rhythmic twitch, and he smiled. Not a person's smile. Something else's. He moved faster than any infected I'd seen, sprinting toward us with inhuman speed. 2 rounds from my rifle took him down, but not before he reached Sergeant Choi. Choi emptied a clip into its chest point blank, but the thing still lunged and bit into his shoulder. Cassia pulled him back, screaming for help. The creature hit the ground, twitching, then stopped. Just stopped. We surrounded it. The body convulsed once. Then it exhaled, a hiss of dark mist from its mouth, and went still. Cassia was already trying to treat Choi, but we knew. The bite had sealed his fate. Delacroix's voice crackled over the comms. "We've got movement on every level. Cameras are down. Containment has failed." He paused. "We're sealing the bunker." "What?" I shouted. "We're still down here." "Too late. They're already in the air ducts. They'll reach the command core in minutes. If we don't seal now, they'll get out. The door behind us began to lower, an emergency bulkhead slowly descending with a hydraulic hiss. We had seconds. "Move!" I shouted. Kasia grabbed her kit. I slung Choi's arm over my shoulder. We ran full speed as the door inched lower, closer. I dove, dragging Choi underneath. The door slammed shut behind us. On the other side, we heard screams. Then silence. We were cut off from the rest of the team. Just 3 of us now. It was 12:30. We had less than an hour to reach the emergency exit at the far end of the bunker, a secondary egress point leading to a tunnel that ran beneath the old fuel depot. If it still worked, it might get us out. We moved through the access corridor, carefully stepping over cracked panels and flickering lights. Alarms were still blaring, over and over, repeating the same words. "Breach detected, evacuate, breach detected, evacuate." We passed the lab. That was our mistake. The window was shattered. Inside, the research team had been torn apart, but not eaten. Just examined. Bodies dissected, laid out like specimens on a table. Whoever, or whatever, had done it wanted to understand us. Not just destroy us. Kasia stared at the wall. Words were scrawled in blood. "We are not the enemy." I didn't know what it meant, didn't want to. We kept moving. Down in the tunnel, the air was thick, the backup lights barely worked. We switched to night vision, eyes glowing green in the blackness. That's when Choi stopped walking. He was breathing hard, his skin had gone pale. The veins in his neck were dark. "I can't," he whispered. "I don't want to change." I didn't want to hear this again, not again. He pulled away from me, reaching for his sidearm. "Keep going. Blow the tunnel if you have to, don't let them spread." I wanted to stop him, but I didn't. Kasia did. She walked up and held his hand. And when the shot echoed through the tunnel, she didn't even flinch. We moved in silence after that. 100 meters to the exit, then 50, then screeching. Dozens of shapes behind us. Sprinting, crawling. Clicking bones and gurgling breath. They were coming, fast. We ran. I threw a frag behind us, just one. Not enough to stop them, but enough to slow them down. It bought us 10 seconds. We reached the end. A steel door, rusty. Old, sealed tight. I pulled the crank. It groaned, resisting. Kasia joined me, twisting it with everything we had. Behind us, the tunnel lit up with flashing shapes, crawling over walls, slamming their limbs against the concrete. The door cracked open. We squeezed through just as the nearest one lunged for my back. I felt claws rake against my vest, but then the door slammed shut with a heavy clang. We were out. The sky above was gray. Smoke drifted across the horizon. Somewhere, in the distance, a helicopter flew low, trailing fire. We stood in the open field, catching our breath. It was 13 o'clock. Exactly 12 hours since this nightmare began. That was the day the world changed. The infection didn't stop. Within 24 hours, half the region had gone dark. Within 48, whole countries were off-grid. The last transmission I received from NATO command was short. Hold the line. Do not trust containment. That was 2 weeks ago. Now, I don't know what's left. Kasia and I keep moving. We've met other survivors. We've seen small strongholds, towns barricaded in, armed groups taking control. And we've seen what happens when they fail. The creatures evolve. They mimic. They plan. Some wear our uniforms. Some remember tactics. Some speak. They aren't random. And worst of all, they remember. That's what scares me the most. This wasn't an accident, not a spill, not a random mutation. It was a choice. Something, or someone, designed this. And they're still out there, watching, waiting. I'm Staff Sergeant James Adler, NATO Rapid Response. I survived the first 12 hours, but the war has only just begun. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support keeps these creepypastas coming. Until next time, stay alert, stay safe, and never ignore the feeling that something is watching.